Monday, March 13, 2020. We're doing part 2 to our topic session, the things we didn't get to. Primarily, I want to talk about the receptors and which medicines people take that might theoretically put them at risk for worsening cases. And I think that's really relevant. I'm not sure, somebody asked a great question about whether you can get coronavirus or COVID-19 twice. And I had an answer that was basically, you can, theoretically, if your immune system doesn't mount a good response the first time. But hopefully on the testing standpoint, we'll see that there's going to be a big push this week and next week, already nationally, but especially also locally, to have a second type of test out there. And that test will measure your immune system's response to this virus. And from everything I've read and heard and listened to from the prominent virus experts, from Dr. Fauci, the leader of NIH, and all the talking heads in the science community, and personally my belief as an immunologist, we should be protected against a second exposure to coronavirus if you mount a good response the first time. And I feel very strongly about that. Mostly known coronaviruses, the MERS coronavirus, the original SARS coronavirus, and actually the common cold virus is actually a coronavirus. Almost all of these we develop an immune response to, and we're protected against those on a regular basis. Some viruses mutate and will change, kind of like the flu virus. This one doesn't look like it has that capability yet. It might, in which case we'll be at this again, but I think our technology of immunization is going to catch up. The real issue is, are we going to have, a big peak of infections and then a second peak and a third peak before we get to immunization? And that may be what everybody's talking about, we're going to go through this again in the fall and in the winter. And when are we going to be done with this infection? Well, I think we'll be done with this infection when at least 70-80% of our population either gets the virus themselves or gets an immunization. And so we do have protective immune antibodies. There will be a small proportion of us who, no matter how many times we see this virus or how many immunizations we get, we just don't get a good enough immune response. And that's just the variability of the human immune response. But we'll be protected by the fact that there's not enough other people around that have the virus that you're ever going to run into. And that's the concept of herd immunity. Meaning, if 80% of us are protected and we don't have the virus, and there's a few people running around still spreading it, they don't bump into each other very often, or bump into people that haven't had it. And so the virus dies out. And that's how you cure polio and other viral illnesses. So I do think this will happen. And so that's kind of a follow-up to this question. And I also don't know whether it's actually the antibodies that are truly protecting us against future infections. The antibody just means our immune system was activated. And that's a readout. It is like a surrogate readout, like a biomarker that you saw this virus. It doesn't show the virus is in there. It just shows the immune system reacted to it. It's kind of like a tuberculosis test. Old skin tests used to do. Doesn't mean that you have tuberculosis in you. It just means your immune system has seen it at some time. And it could be in you, or it could have been mildly in you decades ago, and you still have an immune response. What I want to address today are medicines that theoretically might increase patients' risk of bad outcomes. And so to understand this concept, this is going to be a little bit deep scientifically, but I'll try and make it tolerable. Bless you. Basically, there's a receptor on the inside of our lung, the cells that line our nasopharyngeal tract from the top of our nasopharynx and our sinuses through the back of our throat, all the way down our trachea, into the upper airways of the bronchi and into the deep airways in the bronchioles and alveoli. The same the same receptor exists on the entire GI tract. Again, from the back of your mouth, all the way through your esophagus, your stomach, your small intestines, and colon. It happens to exist other places too, but those are not relevant for whether you're likely to get this virus or not, as far as I know. And I have not seen any evidence. The kidneys, which actually are important for regulating blood pressure, and that's why ACE inhibitors and angiotensin receptor blockers like lisinopril and candesartan and all these other medicines work, are prevalent in the kidneys, and that's why they work as blood pressure medicines. But these receptors are also in the lungs and the GI tract. So what happens is this virus, and this is kind of how everywhere in the media you see it depicted. You guys know why it's called coronavirus? Because corona means sun or halo. And when you look at it microscopically, that's kind of what this looks like. So it's just a very descriptive term of this virus. The way this virus gets into the cells of our body is through this receptor, ACE2, angiotensin converting enzyme 2. That implies there's also a 1 also. This happens to be the same receptor that SARS virus gets into. And now we're dealing with SARS-2, or also known as COVID-19. Okay. So that's basically all these things are synonymous. Okay, and just so you know, MERS. We didn't hear much about MERS. It's called the Middle Eastern Respiratory Syndrome because it was primarily in the Middle East. But all these are coronaviruses. Not to be confused with the coronavirus. So you guys have to deal with my sense of humor. It comes out. I can't help it sometimes. Which I think they've taken off the market, by the way, for obvious reasons. I think there's a lot of bad jokes related to it. And then, technically, most cold viruses are in this family too. So it's very intriguing. So this virus, or at least these two, require this receptor to enter our body. And what happens is this guy goes over there, this little protein binds to that with a very high strength interaction. The biggest thing that separates these two is that the new virus binds way, way better, much stronger. And that's why, because these receptors are not very common in our nasopharynx, but that's why this virus can be found in an abundance up here, where it used to be you only found it down low, in the deep parts of the lung. But because it binds so heavily there, you're finding a lot of cells infected in your nasopharynx. And that's why the nasal swab tests can detect it. Nasal swab tests were not very good for SARS for that reason. So it binds into there, and then it goes inside the cell. This whole thing gets pulled into a little packaging center called the lysosome. Okay. And then it goes to, from there it goes to the nucleus. And this virus, there's a lot of debate. It's funny in science, and I help my daughter with her 10th grade science classes. In the chapter on science, it doesn't know whether to describe viruses as alive or not, because viruses can't replicate on their own. If you took a beaker of viruses right there, it would sit there and fall apart. And so they're not alive, technically, like a bacteria or a fungus is. They require being in an animal that has all the enzymes in the nucleus to replicate DNA or RNA. Viruses are just strands of RNA and DNA, which is what we have in all our cells, and they're packaged in proteins, and that's all they are. And their sequence of either RNA or DNA, like the common cold is like 8,000 base pairs, and we have millions and millions of base pairs in our human genome. So there are these little tiny just snippets of information. This one happens to be 30, maybe I'm getting off track, but we can talk about this. We got a little time today. This one's a little bit more, has a longer story. It's kind of like instead of just the short version of the book, you read the whole book. So it has a little bit longer base pairs, but it also that makes it more susceptible to mutations too, which we can talk about today or at a different time. Anyway, the virus has to go through here, and then this whole cell fills up with virus, and then it kind of explodes, and then all the virus goes to the next cell. Okay, and that's how viruses replicate. Okay, they also, our immune system at the same time recognizes the virus in here, and it immediately takes a piece of it and it puts it on a different receptor. And so, if the virus is actually blue here, it's presenting a little piece of the virus right there. And then the immune cells can come along, hopefully in time. Either T cells, which are really important, cells called NK cells, or other type of cells come along. Now that they can recognize it, they go in and kill this cell before it can divide anymore, before any more virus. So we have a way of going, hey, we got to cut our losses. Let's take out that cell, and boom, we get rid of that cell before it explodes. We do it in a way where we can contain everything inside of it, digest it up nice and neat, and then take it to the garbage dump before it releases it to the next cell. And it's actually this war that's causing all the fluid to develop in the lungs, or the diarrhea in the GI tract. So, the whole reason I wanted to do this is I wanted to make a couple of points. We'll get back to the ACE receptor. Plaquenil works here. So this little digestive compartment, this is the stomach. If you think of the stomach, or the cell as having a stomach, this is where things get digested and either presented on the immune system or transported to the nucleus. And this requires a low pH like our stomach does. So we have acid in our stomach. You guys have had heartburn. What do you take for heartburn? You take an antacid, right? And it neutralizes it and you feel better. I don't know if you've ever done that. Tums, Maalox, all those things. Plaquenil is actually a Tums for the cell. So the way Plaquenil or hydroxychloroquine that you hear about in the media works is it actually raises the pH so that the digestion doesn't occur as quickly, and so the virus can't get to the nucleus as quickly, so the virus can't spread to the next cell as quickly. So it buys us time. It doesn't stop it 100%, kind of like Tums doesn't help you if you have an ulcer. It helps a little bit. It buys you time to get to the doctor. And so the Plaquenil, if it's truly working, that's how it's working, which I think is kind of cool. It's also how it works for lupus and rheumatoid arthritis, but in this case, it's how it's slowing down the virus. But let's get back to this. So what happens when this receptor gets stimulated through natural stimulation is it sends a signal to the nucleus to make more receptors. And this is not the virus in the usual sense, but so again, if it gets a signal, then the signal tells the surface to put more of those receptors on it so it can get more signal. It's a positive feedback loop. Our body uses this for a lot of things. The problem with this is that the virus actually triggers that signal by attaching to just one copy of it, then all of a sudden the cell is making this, the virus is telling the cell to make more receptors so it can have more virus enter. And so by doing that, the virus is increasing all the other viruses' access to that cell. So it increases its likelihood of replicating and taking over that cell before that cell dies. So that's kind of scary. Again, the science of this hasn't caught up. I think we'll be reading about this in the books in 6 to 12 months. This is all speculation right now, but certain things that can lead to increased expression of this are diabetes, hypertension. You name it, if there's a comorbidity associated with this virus, it's been linked to upregulation of this receptor. And if you think about it, I mean, why would diabetes be a bigger risk? You know, we know how to control blood sugars. That's not a problem in the ER and the hospital. And so it's not having diabetes from a blood sugar standpoint that's the problem. It's probably the physiology of its effect on these receptors. That diabetics just have more of these receptors. Hypertensive patients have a lot more of these receptors, and that's part of the reason why they're hypertensive, and that's why ACE inhibitors, which is the name of the medicines, lisinopril, anything that ends in pril, captopril, you name it, if it ends in pril, it's an ACE inhibitor. And also the class of medicines, angiotensin receptor blockers, they all lead to blocking this pathway, and they're great for blood pressure. But by blocking this pathway, you actually upregulate receptors. So maybe it's the medicine for ACE inhibitors and ARBs that do that. Non-steroidals, the whole ibuprofen story, is thought to reside around this. Either that or the fact that there's some anti-inflammatory properties that locally that the ibuprofen can block too. So there is science from the very basic level that explains why we're seeing these risks in these certain populations, but it's not been proven 100% yet. But you can see it's pretty cool that we know all this stuff, and now we're getting to play it out at the molecular level. Doctors don't have any idea what we should. I mean, we don't want to take patients off blood pressure medicines because having a blood pressure of 220 over 150 is a problem, right? Somebody's going to have a stroke or a heart attack. And we can't do that. Because despite this epidemic, pandemic, the rest of human existence is still going on. And we're still breaking bones, and we still have high blood pressure, and we still have diabetes, and we still have all these other things that we have to contend with on the side. And so we can't blanket say, it would be a disaster if somebody actually came out and said, gosh, ACE inhibitors and diabetic medicines are dangerous in the virus. So our first reaction is, I'm going to stop taking that. Next thing you know, you have a blood sugar of 450, and your blood pressure is 250 over 150, you stroke and go to a diabetic coma and die. That's not good either. And you can see the human psyche is very much at play here, and people are very reactionary. And we know that because they drink fish cleaner or whatever it is that has chloroquine in it. We don't want that to happen. So that's the story with medicines and conditions that raise potentially linked to increased risk of coronavirus. Your best bet if you have diabetes and hypertension or a history of strokes or heart attacks or heart disease or any of the high risk factors or age is to hide from this virus as long as possible. Okay? All the models that are out there today are predicting that we'll have 20% of humans in our country infected over 6 months. Every model that's being used for mortality is using approximately 20% infectivity over 6 months. And I don't know whether that's realistic or not, but that's what the experts are using. And the whole hope is, again, if we get 20% by 6 months, we hope that the 80% of people who play hide and seek well for that first 6 months are the diabetics and the hypertensives and all the high-risk people that are ending up in the ICUs and on ventilators. Because if we could hide them the most, if you have stay-at-home orders for your grandparents and you don't let them go anywhere, that's the best thing they can do. Because I do have a lot of hope we're going to get a vaccine. Originally I didn't because of the timing. I thought we would get to 80% immunity through a mass infection, which I think that some places have seen. I think Italy may be getting close to that. China, I was skeptical about China's data right off the bat. And the more I think about it, I don't know. I don't know what to think of China's data, but certainly Italy, I think, has such a high level of infection. I think they're getting to herd immunity naturally because there's no vaccine there. But again, in America, if we hide, if we wear masks, if we stay home and don't go to church, if we take elderly people their groceries instead of them going to the grocery store, if we do pickup, for our groceries and all our shopping at Walmart instead of going into the store, we can hide. If we wipe the gas pump down with the Clorox bleach before and after we use it, then we might hide successfully. The scientists have started the immunization protocols. There's some really cool new immunization techniques out there. Maybe we should make that a topic for tomorrow or the next day. The traditional immunization plan versus what we call mRNA or live virus immunization things. That again, if we get 20% infected over 6 months, maybe we have mass immunization of the other 80%, and we don't have the death toll that we could have over 2 years if we don't control this. So, any follow-up questions to this stuff? Is that making sense? The viral, this is pretty deep science today. Sorry. Do you guys have any questions for tomorrow? Find it interesting?
We have one question for tomorrow. I can email it to you if you want.
Okay, perfect. All right, that's what I got for today. It's a little short session. I'm proud of you guys all for wearing your masks. If you guys know anybody in the hospital that doesn't have a cloth mask, if they want one, I have 85 I can give out. So just let me know. And you should have some that you wear when you're not in the hospital too, in my opinion. Wear them out in the public, wear them in the stores, wear them when you're picking up drive-through at McDonald's, things like that. If you can pay for things with your phone without using a credit card or wipe your credit card down, I think cash is a really bad idea. The cash system may be the thing of the past.
Especially if you go inside, there's a lot of them that are wearing gloves and they're not changing gloves.
Yeah, I mean, wearing gloves and not knowing how to use them. I mean, it's one thing to have tools, but if you have, if you get carpenter's tools and you don't know how to use them, what good are they? I mean, you could, trust me, I know this from experience. I have plumber's tools and carpenter's tools, and I've made giant messes. So, again, a glove and a mask, a surgical mask or an N95 mask, these are healthcare tools that we know how to utilize. This is a tool that anybody can use. This is protecting everybody from us. But to use gloves appropriately, yeah, you need to change them every time. You need to wash your hands.
And they're not.
Yeah, I know. I mean, you might as well not wear gloves. So, anyway, be safe. Everybody's learning. It's great. And all this stuff that seems just horrendously painful and boring over the next 6 to 12, 18 to 24 months are going to save more lives than, again, trying to get ventilators and salvage medicines on this end. I can guarantee you that. It's hard to know until we're up against it. Until we come up to the train wreck that's coming.
So that's where a lot of our concern is a lot of these people sitting here, my staff, who have worked in EBS and wherever they can. And
yep.
When do we finally go, okay, we can do this much to protect everyone, or is that done?
When you say that, you mean like when are we going to have orders to do more to protect each other?
Well, I mean, when are we going to be like my department's closed?
Yeah.
So, is it going to be closed for another 6 months? I mean, we're just like.
No. Is your department functional at home?
We can't do telehealth.
You can't do what?
I don't think we can do any telehealth.
What department?
Cardiac.
Yeah, I mean, you'd be surprised at what you can do with YouTube videos. I mean, if you get creative. Yeah. Do you really need somebody in here on a treadmill, or can they use their stairs at home? If you're following them, and if you send them, if they have a smartwatch with a heart rate monitor, and you can get them exercising by standing up and down out of a chair in front of you. I would be surprised that you get reimbursed for the same rate too as soon as you establish a video connection. There's absolutely no reason why you guys can't be doing telehealth right now. This is one of the best places I've worked in as far as the telehealth system. You just have to be creative. And
but how much does the patient have to have in order? I mean,
technically, from a billing standpoint, you need to establish a split-second connection with them through the system, and it could be either audio or video, but through the telehealth system. Once that, they just need a phone. They can put it on speaker or wear earphones and have their phone there for half an hour while you're working out with them. Now, it'd be nice if they had a video on their computer or their phone and they had a stand where you could see them and make sure they were okay. I mean, the liability issues, I don't know, but, what if they fall over and have a heart attack while you're watching them do their exercise? Well, at least you see them and you can call 911. How much different is that from if they have a heart attack and your thing here? I mean, we're close to the ER, I get that. But them not doing cardiac rehab post-MI is not a good thing either. So what risk are we putting on them by not doing cardiac rehab now?
And we haven't been for 3 weeks.
No, and that's appropriate, but use this time to figure out creativity. I don't think we're going back to open clinics anytime, at least in the next 2 to 4 weeks. But I think with a little bit of creativity, you could reopen tomorrow. Because the IT people are ready to help you.
And you said that it's a reimbursable?
It is reimbursed.
For cardiac rehab.
Yeah, I mean, the same CPD codes.
I didn't read that anywhere.
That's okay. Medicare, Medicaid, which is probably most of your patients anyway, part of the whole coronavirus response effort was to change the rules. Frankly, it's probably been reimbursable the whole time. It's just there's never been an effort to get telemedicine in mass up and running like this. And from a risk mitigation standpoint, from a legal standpoint, is it really best to have somebody at home do an exercise when you don't have an EMS or a crash cart there? Yeah, it's better to have them right here where you can get them to the ER or you hook paddles up to them, of course. But you've got to weigh the risk of them not exercising post-MI too. We know that's a huge risk.
Yeah, I've been talking to Dr. Travis about it, our
It's great.
medical director, and trying to get some thoughts from him.
There's a ton of smart people in IT that have things pretty streamlined through the CAS system, through Meditech. Again, I don't know whether Travis is using his EMR system to run cardiac rehab or not.
No.
Okay, so you use Meditech?
We don't use Meditech. We have a system called Life Systems International, which is a telemetry, all-inclusive data.
So you got to realize that there's going to be sacrifices, and you need to weigh the risk and benefit. But could the patient do something more than nothing? Probably. And you can bill them at the same CPD codes that an in-office visit are. That's how telehealth works. Phone call visits are very poorly reimbursed. So that's why it's important if you establish a split-second either audio or audio plus video connection, and the whole visit's considered telehealth, whether you transfer to the phone from there or not.
Okay, thanks for that.
I've unfortunately learned a lot about the
We
system-based
just
practice.
didn't- and when we first started, we were like, okay, maybe this will be over in a few weeks. And
Well, I don't want to be pessimistic. I want to be realistic.
yeah,
I don't think we're going to, I think we haven't even started up on this part of the curve yet.
okay.
And once we're here, it's going to be pretty obvious. It's at least 2 weeks, and then in 2 weeks, it's going to be pretty obvious. So, again, the whole psychology of a 2-week plan is such that we can put our hands around a 2-week plan. So make a 2-week plan and get going on it, because you have patients that need rehab. So, and tell them not to smoke. My goodness.
You'd be surprised. We don't have that many
Good.
more smokers.
Most people quit after they've had a massive heart attack,
Yeah.
or they've had congestive heart failure. So that's good.
Well, thank you.
Life-changing events like heart attacks, strokes, heart failure, and coronavirus are great motivators to get people to quit smoking.
Yeah.
And vaping and everything else. All right, guys.
Okay, thank you.
Enjoy the rest of your day.
You'll want to talk to Jamie.
Do you want
Talk to Jamie Elliott.
Oh,
about the
yeah,
telehealth.
yeah, I will. Yeah. Some funny,